The story opens in the city of Nottingham, in the 16th century, where a thief named Marion enters a stable to steal a horse. Unfortunately, she is caught by the horse's owner, who turns out to be a handsome nobleman named Lord Robin from the Locksley family. Instead of yelling at a thief, Robin fell in love with Marion. He let Marion take his horse, as long as Marion wanted to be his lover. Over time, Robin and Marion then in a serious relationship. They were often together in Robin's castle. Eventually, Robin received a letter from the Sheriff of Nottingham requesting him to join the crusade. Because this was an order from the sheriff, Robin was no choice to leave his wealth and also Marion. For 4 years, Robin continued to fight with his fellow soldiers against the Saracens in Kibrit Peninsula, Arabia. In the war, Robin and his partner Clayton worked together to defeat one of the Moor troops, who used machine archers. Robin then climbed to the top of the building, and finally he could kill the archer. Robin and the others then went down to look for the rest of Moor troops, but in the middle of it, Clayton disappeared. Robin and the others then tried to find Clayton, but without realizing it, they actually entered the trap of the Moor troops, who had taken Clayton as hostage. And that's where the Crusaders began to be cleared out by the Moor troops. But in the middle of it, the Crusaders threw large stones, which overwhelmed the Moor troops. Robin then dueled with the general of the Moor army named Yahya bin Umar, or Little John. In the duel, Yahya managed to take down Robin, but suddenly he was attacked by the Crusaders' commander, who finally got Yahya caught. Long story short, the Crusaders could conquer the city and started executing the Moor troops to get information. However, Robin, who has a good heart, didn't agree with this action. It was because the Moor troops were no longer armed, so why execute them too? Unfortunately, their commander named Guy of Gisborne ignored Robin and continued to execute several Moor troops. Until finally Guy of Gisborne took a young man named Salim, who turned out to be Yahya's son. Guy of Gisborne then asked Yahya to provide information if he wanted his son to survive. But when Yahya provided information about his group, Guy of Gisborne would still execute Salim. Robin then tried to rebel, then tried to save Salim. But Robin was hit by an arrow, while Salim was killed in front of Yahya. This left Yahya devastated. After the incident, Robin was then sent back to his origin by medical ship. Meanwhile, Yahya, who could escape, apparently infiltrated the ship too. Upon arriving back home, Robin went straight to the castle to see Marion. But when he got there, Robin's castle had been torn down, and all his wealth was confiscated by the sheriff. Robin then went to see his friend, a priest named Friar Tuck, where Tuck was very surprised to see Robin still alive. That's because 2 years ago, the sheriff declared that Robin had died on the battlefield, and the sheriff took the opportunity to seize all of Robin's assets. Instead of funding the war, the money would be used for the sheriff's political interests. In addition, the sheriff also taxed the citizens claiming to provide for the war, and expelled most of the commoners from Nottingham who refused to pay taxes. Robin then went to the city center to look for Marion, and finally could find her, who was now selling as a merchant. Unfortunately, Marion had a new lover named Will Tillman, which of course broke Robin's heart. When Robin vomited to see her lover with someone else, he was suddenly found by Yahya or John, who wanted to thank Robin for trying to save his son. Yahya then offered Robin to help fight the sheriff, because Yahya realized that all this war was for power, not religion. The sheriff and his officials also seized all the wealth of the people in order to expand their wings and territory. The two then visit a meeting held by the sheriff, where the sheriff tries to influence people to pay taxes for his war bill. Marion and Will then express their disagreement, because now the townspeople have nothing. It's hard to support their families, it's hard to eat, and pay taxes at Moor make it hard for them. At that very moment, Tuck appeared and mentioned that Robin was still alive. This shocked the townspeople, including Marion, especially the sheriff, because he had to return Robin's property. After hearing the sheriff's speech, Yahya told him the strategy to defeat the sheriff, which was to steal all his treasures so that he couldn't finance his war, because this city was the bank that funded the crusade. However, Yahya couldn't do it because his right hand was broken in the previous war. Therefore, Yahia appointed Robin as the one who would stop the war. To defeat the sheriff and get away with stealing, Yahia invited Robin to improve his archery skills. They then stayed at Robin's castle and used it as a training ground. While Robin was preparing the target, Marion suddenly came knocking on the door. Robin initially wanted to meet Marion, but Yahia stopped him. This was because if Robin reunited with Marion, then their plan would be revealed and Marion would be the next victim. During the first training, Yahia asked Robin to shoot at his body. However, Yahia quickly deflected all of Robin's arrows. From there, Yahia realized that Robin's speed in archery was still very slow. He then gave Robin his bow, which turned out to increase Robin's speed and power in archery. Day after day passed. Robin continued to hone his skills with Yahia's guidance. Robin's skills were getting better and better. Once Robin's skills were ready, Yahia asked Robin to approach the sheriff and gain his trust by giving him a money deposit. That way Robin would know where the sheriff's treasure was kept. But since Robin had no money at the moment, Yahia asked Robin to carry out his first action by seizing the tax money from the sheriff's soldiers. On the other hand, while the sheriff's soldiers were collecting the tax money from the citizens, Robin suddenly arrived and started killing all the sheriff's soldiers, then took the money. The next morning, Robin met the sheriff as a nobleman and gave him his money as a sign that Robin was on his side. Seeing Robin's sudden kindness, the sheriff invited him to talk at the church, where Robin met Marion, who was still in love with Robin. But Marion can't do anything about it because she already has Will. Robin was then dragged out by Yahia, who kept reminding Robin not to get close to the woman of his dreams. Robin then returned to action by stealing all the sheriff's money that was being counted by Tuck. After taking the money, Robin began to distribute it to the residents, including Marion secretly. The next day, Tuck was severely scolded by the sheriff because his tax money was stolen by a thief. Tuck then told the sheriff about the characteristics of the thief. He said that the thief wearing a hood on his head. At night, when Robin was traveling around the city, he accidentally saw Marion and Tuck, who were planning something. It turned out that they wanted to find evidence of the sheriff's bad politics and would invite all citizens to fight the sheriff. Robin then began to commit his thefts every day and distributed them to the citizens who made Robin famous as the Man Hood. The next day, Robin attended a secret meeting held by the sheriff and several priests to discuss the threat of the Hood. In the middle of the meeting, Robin advised the sheriff to caught and arrested the Hood and kill him. This made the sheriff trust Robin even more, and eventually gave Robin a seat on his political council. Robin then attended a political gathering, where he met Will, who represented the people's voice. The two then discussed the Hood's actions, which makes Will a little disgusted. Because with the Hood, the citizens began to side with him, rather than Will, who only capitalized on speeches. On the next day, Yahia and Robin began to act again by stealing the spoils of war. Robin then infiltrated the treasure storage through the wagon. But once there, Robin was discovered by one of the money counters, which led to Robin being attacked by dozens of guards. But Robin didn't keep stunning and silent. He immediately used his skills to kill the guards. In the middle of it, Robin's thigh was hit by an arrow, which forced Robin to retreat. He then jumped off the top of the building and landed right on Yahia's cart. The two then fled the scene and got everyone's attention. Because the Hood's behavior was so out of line, Sheriff and Tuck were interrupted by the High Priest, who revealed that the Hood had attracted the attention of the Supreme Council of Cardinals, who would be arriving tomorrow night. He then asked Sheriff to organize a party to welcome the Cardinal. After the High Priest left, the Sheriff called his best troops, the Commander, Guy of Gisborne, to hunt down the Hood. Long story short, the welcoming party was held. The party turned out not to be a blessing theme, but an illicit theme, where the political council in the guise of priests got drunk, gambled, and behaved immorally at the party. Robin meets Gisborne, who still hates him for trying to save prisoners during the war. Robin then joins in the gambling with the council, where he meets Marion, who is carrying out a plan. At that moment, Tuck arrives and steals the key to the file room from one of the priests. He then gave it to Marion, who immediately went to the room to retrieve the treasure deposit file. Along with that, the cardinal came to see the sheriff to discuss the hood. But at the same time, Robin suddenly came with Tuck and told the cardinal that Tuck had stolen the key from one of the priests. The Cardinal Franklin then asked the sheriff to kill Tuck, but Robin refused and instead suggested that Tuck be expelled from the priesthood. The cardinal accepted the suggestion, making Tuck officially a commoner. After Tuck was taken away, the cardinal asked the sheriff to seize all the citizens' property, as the King of England needed funds for his war model. The sheriff then sent Gisborne and his troops to begin depriving the citizens. Upon arriving in the center of town, Gisborne started taking all the citizens' property and kidnapped Marion, who tried to stop them. When Marion wanted to be taken, Robin and Yahia came to rescue Marion by taking over the wagon and ended up being chased by Gisborne's troops. In the middle of the chase, Marion finally found out that the hood was Robin. Seeing that Gisborne's troops were not finished, Robin jumped onto Gisborne's cart and took over one of his horses. Robin was then chased by Gisborne's troops until Robin's horse was hit by an arrow. Robin jumped off the bridge and landed right on Yahia's cart, but at the same time, Gisborne shot an explosive arrow, which finally made the three of them roll to the ground. Yahia then asked Robin and Marion to escape, while he would hold off Gisborne's troops. But of course, Yahia was unable to, and ended up getting caught. The next morning, Yahia was interrogated by the sheriff, who asked Yahia to tell him the hood's true identity. But of course, Yahia refused, and instead promised to kill the sheriff. Meanwhile, Will gathered all the residents and invited them to get out of this city, which was no longer comfortable and secure. At the same time, the hood came and revealed his true identity as Robin, the nobleman. Robin then advised everyone to fight back against the sheriff and take the city. Since Robin was one of the nobles who sided with the people, everyone agreed with Robin's advice, which was to fight back against the sheriff. Robin, Marion, and Will then met Tuck, where Tuck thanked Robin for getting him out of office. Tuck then opened Marion's previously stolen file, which turned out to contain the deposit of the people's money to the king, which would be sent in 2 days. Realizing this, they immediately made plans to reclaim the money. Robin then invited most of the citizens to his castle and gave them a plan to face the sheriff's army. After getting directions from Robin, the citizens began to make weapons in the form of Molotov cocktails and also set up traps to break the money carts. Long story short, the day of money's departure had come, led by the sheriff. Meanwhile, Yahia, who was being tortured in the cell, finally could kill one of the guards. He then got out of the cell and found the soldier's armory. When the sheriff wanted to leave the fort, some residents dropped a cross pole to block the road, and that's when Will led most of the citizens to start a riot. Meanwhile, Robin and Marion started burning wood in the ditch to knock down the money wagon that was right above it. As the chaos intensified, the cart eventually fell into the ditch. Robin and Marion then started to take all the money to be sent to the forest, but after all the money was sent, Robin was suddenly hit by an arrow. Marion then pulled out the arrow while kissing him. However, without realizing it, it turns out that Will saw Marion, which eventually made Will hurt. Will was then accidentally hit, which made his face fall into the flames. Gisborne, who happened to be at the location, then chased Robin and ended up dueling with him. In the fight, Robin finally could defeat Gisborne. Robin and Marion then went to the dock and found Will absent. Since Will had to get to the forest, Robin and Marion returned back to the scene of the commotion. There, they found Will, who had burns on his face. He is angry because Marion kissed Robin. At that moment, Robin also saw the citizens being beaten by the soldiers. This made Robin remember the war. Because he didn't want many victims to fall, Robin surrendered to the soldiers so that the citizens could be freed. Then Robin was brought by 3 soldiers to the sheriff. When the sheriff wanted to kill Robin, suddenly one of the soldiers attacked the sheriff and 2 soldiers. It turned out that the soldier was Yahia. Yahia and Robin then killed Sheriff by hanging him. After that, the 2 of them went to the forest to distribute the money to the villagers. After the commotion, the cardinal approached Will, who now had a grudge against Robin. The Cardinal Franklin then made Will the new sheriff. After becoming sheriff, Will issued an arrest warrant for the hood, but Robin responds to Will's action by shooting an arrow at the wanted sign held by Will. With that action, the movie ended.